The Honda CR-V has always been known as being the reliable, durable, practical, and family-friendly crossover in the compact segment, going head-to-head with the Toyota RAV4 for the past 25 years. The CR-V nameplate, though, goes beyond just practicality. It comes down to fuel efficiency and affordability, which is why we have seen 300,000 Americans per year buy a CR-V over the last 5 to 6 years. Now, with new rivals emerging, such as the Volkswagen Tiguan, the Hyundai Tucson, and Kia Sportage, there's a lot more vehicles right now offering similar value propositions with bigger interiors and better practicality. So we have to wonder, how can Honda improve on their best-selling model? And that's what we're going to find out today with the 2023 CR-V EXL. We're going to take a deep dive into what this crossover is offering when it comes to the new technology for the interior. Also, when we take it out for a test drive, we're going to find out if it's one of the better performing vehicles in this segment, and also see why, if you are looking at buying a crossover below $40,000, then maybe taking a look at the new Honda CR-V might be a great decision. Now, before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to Honda North in Danvers, Massachusetts for allowing me to do this review. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Honda inventory. Also, before we get started, make sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you're notified every time a new video goes live on the channel. And so, without wasting any further time, let's get right in this review. When you take a look at the Honda CR-V's history, this crossover has seen minimal changes throughout the last 3 generations and 16 years, sticking to a basic blueprint that American consumers have been willing to buy and return to since 2006. With the compact crossover market becoming highly competitive, where Honda's main focus can no longer solely be on the Toyota RAV4, it was time for the CR-V to once again set the standard for where this segment will be for the next 5 to 10 years. Honda, being a brand that sticks to tradition and being seen as a class leader, rarely revolutionizes their lineup. But the 2023 model just might usher in a new era and chapter for this Japanese manufacturer. Starting off with pricing, the CR-V EXL comes in at $35,260. Sitting just below the top trim Sport Touring Hybrid. With Honda making wholesale changes for the 2023 model, it's not just the exterior or interior that receives a much needed refresh, as the CR-V is now underpinned by the Honda architecture platform that made its debut a few years ago. And with this new chassis, Honda's best-selling vehicle not only experiences a growth spurt, but mechanically speaking, the suspension has some weight to it that contrasts greatly to last generation. In terms of size, the CR-V grows by 3 inches in length and 1 inch in width, adding more space to the cabin to accommodate passengers of all sizes. At the time of this review, ground clearance numbers haven't been finalized, but we'd say it's similar to the 2022 model year, which came in at 8.2 inches. What everyone really wants to talk about is the new design, that at least for up front, is a departure from last year, as every aspect of the fascia has been remolded and modernized. Full LED headlights are one of the key aesthetic features for 2023, and taking on a bigger role this year is the honeycomb grille that adds a sportier look to this crossover. By removing most of the chrome accents, the CR-V also appears to be classier and more upscale, even for the EX and EXL, as the hybrid models will likely be seen as more visually appealing for most buyers. Moving over to the side profile, the EXL will be sitting on 18-inch alloy wheels, and a common theme for this generation is Honda trimming down on optional packages and features, with 18s also being standard for the EX. Ride quality was also clearly a focal point this year, as there was a noticeable difference in how the CR-V managed the imperfections in the road, but also its demeanor at highway speeds reflects other crossovers in this market. You'll have body color side mirrors with turn signal indicators, to go along with blind spot detection for added safety. Then coming around to the back, the rear fascia is slightly more evolutionary and recognizable to the CR-V nameplate than up front. However, the one major change is the switch to LED taillights and the removal of chrome accents that did cheapen the look of this crossover in the past. Rather than making a bold statement, Honda stayed conventional, only making minor tweaks where it was necessary to preserve the legacy of the CR-V. But it is worth mentioning that by opting for the hybrid trims, this crossover will have a sportier and trendy road presence that's becoming more common within this market. Under the hood, the 2023 Honda CR-V EXL is powered by a 1.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that produces 190 horsepower and 179 pound-feet of torque, and is paired with a CVT. While there's been no changes for the powertrain compared to last year, Honda claims they've reworked the transmission to mimic the gear shifts and to offer a smoother experience when accelerating. With 0 to 60 times hovering around 9 seconds, the CR-V is not the most athletic or spry crossover. However, if performance is a priority on your list of must-haves, opting for the Sport or Sport Touring Hybrid might be worth considering, as its 204 horsepower and combined average of 37 miles per gallon gives owners the best of both worlds of efficiency and improved power. For the drivetrain, front-wheel drive does come standard, with all-wheel drive being a $1,500 option. And then when it pertains to fuel economy, you're looking at right around 27 miles per gallon in the city and 32 miles per gallon on the highway. Stepping inside, you're greeted by power adjustable and heated leather trimmed seats for both the driver and passenger, with the driver's side having 2-position memory functionality. In contrast to last generation, these seats do provide a lot of comfort, with the bolstering being firm and supportive, which is something we don't typically see in this segment. A point of emphasis for 2023 is the higher quality materials found throughout the interior, and now with the Classier dashboard design, wider center console, and improved technology, the CR-V is not only going upmarket, it's also showing maturity rather than just being seen as a sensible and affordable crossover. In front of you, a premium leather-wrapped steering wheel will complement the driving experience, as its higher quality reflects the handling and steering feel as you travel down winding back roads. New is a half-digital, half-analog gauge cluster, where you can scroll through a wide range of information to customize this display to your liking. Then moving over to the infotainment system, the EXL will be equipped with the upgraded 9-inch touchscreen with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility. But for those wanting onboard navigation and the Bose sound system, you will have to opt for the Sport Touring. To the delight of many longtime CR-V owners, Honda didn't deviate away from their traditional layout, as there will be physical buttons and the dial that controls the volume mounted to the left of the screen. And unlike some competitors who are embedding the climate settings within the head unit, you'll still have the row of buttons for the AC, front and rear defrosters, dual zone climate control, and heated seats mounted further down the dash. While more in depth than what we had experienced in the last generation CR-V, this user interface doesn't lose its intuitiveness, as the screen is within arm's reach and quick to respond. The resolution and quality is certainly on par with rivals, and if you currently own a 5th generation CR-V, you'll appreciate the new technology that's very easy to get adapted to. As always, you'll have a rear backup camera with trajectory, providing multiple angles for better visibility, to go along with front and rear parking sensors. Returning to the center console, the EXL will come standard with a wireless phone charging pad, with a USB and USB-C input and a 12-volt outlet mounted just above. Next to the gear shifter, the CR-V will have a drive mode selector, where you can switch between normal, eco, and snow, and you'll also find the auto start stop and hill descent control buttons. For the center storage compartment, there's more than enough room for smaller items. And rounding out the front seating area, above will be a power moonroof to let in some natural light to the interior. Now moving on to the second row, we're going to sit off on the passenger side. And this seat has been adjusted all the way back and is somewhat on a recline. And I have plenty of legroom here. Now, if you felt that the 2022 CR-V just wasn't practical or spacious enough for you and your family, well, you're in luck, because for this generation, you get an additional ½ inch of legroom, and it's most certainly noticeable when the front seats are adjusted all the way back. Now, for someone at my height, around 5'5", we can sit in pretty much any vehicle and not feel cramped or claustrophobic. But if you have kids in their child seats or you have average-sized adults, they should be able to sit back here pretty comfortably. Then when it comes to headroom, you do have a lower roof line, but I do think that taller passengers should have no problem and no issue and don't need to worry about hitting their head on the headliner. But also new for 2023 is that these seats do recline by about 10 degrees. So now you can just sit back here, relax, enjoy the driving experience if you are going on a longer road trip with the family. And this right here just makes the CR-V feel a bit more entry-level luxury-like, and I think that's the idea here behind this generation, to make the CR-V feel a bit higher quality than the outgoing model, but also really to separate the CR-V from the new HR-V. Then moving on to the center seat, I do believe that you can fit a third person back here, much like I said with the last generation, mostly because we do not have an aggressive center hump. Also, of course, with the CR-V being about 1 inch wider than the outgoing generation, you're going to notice that when it comes to the shoulder room. So I think you can have that third person tag along with you on a longer drive. And finally, moving on to the driver's side, this seat is adjusted a bit further up, and I can just sit back here and relax, no problem, even without having to recline those seats. So really, when you compare this to some of the newer rivals, such as the bigger Volkswagen Tiguan that came out a couple of years ago, the new Hyundai Tucson, and Kia Sportage, this definitely feels like those three crossovers. And that right there is why I think the Honda CR-V for 2023 is worth the upgrade if you do own a 5th or 4th generation CR-V. Also back here, you do have 2 rear air vents. And rounding out the second row seating area, you do get a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Now coming around to the back, for the EXL, you're going to receive a power liftgate. And inside, behind the second row seats, you're looking at right around 39.3 cubic feet of room, which is a marginal increase over the outgoing model. So this will be on par with the Toyota RAV4, the Hyundai Tucson, Volkswagen Tiguan, and the Kia Sportage. I was able to fit all my camera gear today, no problem. So that's 2 bags of camera gear, a gimbal box, and a tripod. Probably go on grocery shopping as well, maybe even throwing in a small table and some smaller furniture. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of Americans have chosen the CR-V to be their daily driver and their family hauler. So if they are going on a road trip with the family, I think you'll be able to fit probably around 7 to 8 bags of luggage, and that's with the second row seats up. Then with the second row seats full, you're going to have right around 75.6 cubic feet of room, which again is better than the outgoing model. So Honda stuck to what they know best, being practical, giving you a lot of interior space, and also be family friendly. Then on either side of the rear cargo area, you will have some cubbies for some smaller items. There's also guards in place to keep those items staying put and not sliding around when you are on a spirited drive, or maybe you're on some mountain roads during the winter when you're going to go skiing and snowboarding. Then beneath the floor mat, and this is so great to see, you have a spare tire. So many rivals and competitors in this market, or even in other markets, don't even give you a spare. It's usually a fix-a-flat kit. But Honda, once again, gives you that spare tire, so if you do encounter a flat on your road trips or travels, you can fix that and be back on the road. And then lastly, which is not installed on the model that I'm filming right now, there are imprints for your rear cargo cover, which will keep all your valuable items out of sight. So if you are like me and you have camera gear or anything else of value, you can leave them back here and have that peace of mind knowing that no one will be able to peek in and steal what you have. And then once you're done, just press the button and the liftgate will close automatically. All right, so we are now behind the wheel of the all-new 2023 Honda CR-V, and just to give you a bit of a behind the scenes of what I do throughout my reviews, I tend not to do the test drive before I start filming. So this is all going to be raw motion. This is all stuff that I'm experiencing for the first time. And wow, stepping into this vehicle, this is a huge upgrade over the last generation. So let's get right into this test drive. Let's see how the CR-V performs, how it handles, how it drives, and how it compares to other crossovers in this market, and more importantly, how it compares to last generation. Now, before we really get onto public roads, let's dive right into the driving environment that you find yourself in when you get behind the wheel for the first time, because there is a bit of a learning curve. And I'm not just talking about the user interface or even the gauge cluster, because that has been a bit enhanced as well. It really comes down to the interior spacing and how wide the CR-V feels for 2023. Now, it's been widened by about 1 inch. It's been lengthened close to 3 inches. And if I was to compare this to other crossovers in this segment, this feels very much like the Volkswagen Tiguan. Now, I think the reason why it feels so wide is because of the dashboard. This seems to come right out of the Civic, which is not a bad thing at all. I find the Civic to be very classy and upscale for its segment, and this is no different for the CR-V. This is a vast improvement. But when it comes to that shoulder room, you have plenty of it, so you're not going to feel very claustrophobic in here at all. It doesn't necessarily feel like a compact crossover. So I think when it comes to hopping in from the last generation CR-V, you are going to notice that difference immediately. Although on this thinner road, it's still very easy to drive around, very maneuverable. Now let's get into the overall vision that you have here to work with the CR-V. A-pillars are super thin, so you don't need to worry about blind spots when you do approach an intersection. Then when it comes to the side mirrors, they are placed in a decent spot. They are somewhat small, but I can see what is in my blind spot very easily. And then also looking out back, and this is a bit of a surprise, even with the headrest up, I can see everything behind me, so there's a lot of vision here. Another thing too that has been changed for the 2023 model year is that I find the seating position to be a bit higher up off the ground. So you have a much more commanding feel and vision over the road, which adds to that safety aspect that you're looking for with this vehicle. All right, so let's do a quick acceleration here. I will be going on the highway later in this video. You know, the official 0 to 60 times are around 9 seconds, and this really didn't feel much slower than the last generation. Now, I know a lot of people don't like the CVT, but I do notice that the CVT mimics the gear shifts a bit smoother than the last CR-V I had driven. I think that was back in August. This feels all around smooth, but also it certainly feels more refined. When you take a look at what the CR-V has been offering to consumers for the past 25 years, it's never been about the performance, the 0 to 60 times, the tech-driven cabins, or the flashiest exteriors. It's all about the intangibles. It's all about providing customers with a family-friendly interior, a lot of practicality, reliability, and a vehicle that is just suitable for a lot of Americans. And I feel that now for 2023, this is exactly what consumers are looking for in the compact crossover market. There's a lot of people that were questioning, why did the CR-V upsize so significantly? And I think it's mostly because we're seeing rivals do the exact same. In the last few years, we saw the Volkswagen Tiguan grow very substantially, but also even the Hyundai Tucson. So the compact crossover market is going a bit more upsized, where it's going to be a bit more conducive for larger families, but also it's kind of that nice mix where maybe if you don't have the budget for a mid-size crossover, you go with the compact that gives you that interior spacing, that practicality that you want, but you're not spending $50,000 to do so. Now, so far, 10 minutes into this test drive, I am noticing the improvements that Honda made to this chassis and for this specific generation, where the suspension is stiffer, but also it feels a bit more rigid. And I don't mean that in a way where you're gonna feel a jolt, you're gonna get thrown around, and it feels unrefined. I feel a bit more weight to this crossover than I did for the 2022 model year, and I don't believe that's a bad thing at all. Sure, it might affect the 0 to 60 times, but that's not what buyers are looking for with the CR-V. And this really translates to the steering as well, where there is a bit more of a weight to it. It feels a bit heavier, and unlike Japanese manufacturers, you have a bit more feedback in the corners, which I wasn't expecting heading into this vehicle and heading into this review. So let's get on the highway here. Let's see what the CR-V is made of. I do notice that they reworked the CVT. It doesn't drone as much. Now, unfortunately, I am behind a slower driver, which is to be expected. That's usually what happens on these test drives. I never am able to really punch it when I get on the highway, but we'll have an opportunity to pass the slower driver. Oh, you don't step on the brake getting on the highway. That's not safe. I think you have more than enough passing power. That's sufficient. Now, at highway speeds, at around 65 miles an hour, it's pretty nice in here. It feels very composed on the roadways. Now, there is some road noise entering the cabin, but I think a lot of it is the wheels themselves. So I probably would upgrade to Michelin's if I could. Now, I'll be honest, before getting behind the wheel of this crossover, I was fully prepared to recommend going with the hybrid trims over the full gas-powered models, such as the EX and the EXL. Mostly because I feel that Honda is really pushing and incentivizing consumers to go in the hybrid direction. When you take a look at the exterior design, you get the Sportier Aesthetics, but also you get the roof rails and also the exhaust outlets. And some buyers are very fickle. They want to have that on their vehicle. And we're seeing that across the board for a lot of compact crossovers in this price range and market. But after spending about 30 minutes behind the wheel of this EXL, I'm beginning to rethink all of that, because it doesn't matter whether you go with the hybrid or not. It doesn't matter whether you go with the 1.5 or the 2-liter unless you really care about fuel efficiency. What it really boils down to is having a vehicle that feels premium, that feels more expensive than the price tag would suggest. If you're telling me that this is around $36,000, it's below $40,000, I would say that is impossible, because this feels like a top trim model. It feels like a vehicle that's probably closer to around $42,000, $43,000. And it's all because Honda really focused on the suspension, they focused on that CVT, and now it feels like all the other crossovers in this market, like the Tiguan, like the Tucson, which I still believe are the closest competitors right now to the CR-V when you take a look at the dimensions, but also the practicality and the interior spacing. But also, more importantly, when you compare this to the current RAV4, this is far and away better. The interior materials are higher quality, they're more premium, but also the way this vehicle performs on the roadways, whether it's the highway or the back roads, it feels planted, it feels secure, it feels heavy, and the steering, most importantly to me as an enthusiast, I love the fact that it has some weight to it. I love the fact that there is some feedback, and that's not something we typically see not only in this market, but from Japanese manufacturers as a whole. So this feels somewhat European-like, and that's actually what Acura has been doing lately with the MDX and also even the RDX. This has European qualities, and I, as an enthusiast and I, as a journalist, definitely love to see that. This is really putting a lot of manufacturers and rivals on notice. The real highlight here for the 2023 model is just how comfortable of a crossover this really is. When you're not on the highway, the interior is quiet, it feels refined, it's relaxing in here, and it feels entry-level luxury, especially for the EXL. But then also, when you are cruising around on these back roads, the steering is nice and firm and direct, and it's just a nice daily driver, and it's just built off of all the reasons why you wanted to own a CR-V, but this time around, it feels different. It feels like Honda really gave this vehicle a more premium quality that under $40,000 is, I think, unheard of in this market. This would definitely be on par with what we have been seeing from Hyundai, from Kia, from Volkswagen. And I think that's why Honda ultimately went with the bigger design. They upsized. This is a whole new era for the CR-V nameplate, and I'm really glad to see that Honda went in this direction, where I feel as though now that the HR-V is kind of taking the place of what the last generation CR-V used to hold. And I think that's why, if you're somebody who doesn't want to buy a bigger vehicle, go with the HR-V. But if you're ready to make that switch, if you're ready to make that upgrade, the CR-V for 2023 is definitely a vehicle worth taking a look at and should be on your list of considerations. So to wrap up my time with the 2023 Honda CR-V, I am genuinely surprised and impressed. It wasn't too long ago where I had filmed the last generation, and I knew for a fact that Honda was going to focus on giving this vehicle a more upscale interior and make it a bit more modern like we saw with the Civic. But I wasn't ready to buy into the fact that Honda was going to retool the CVT or add some rigidity to the suspension and the chassis, and yet they did, and then some. When you take a look at all the competitors in this market right now, compact crossovers are getting bigger, but also they're being more tech-driven as well. And we knew for a fact that Honda was not going to deviate away from their values and the fundamentals. They were going to give you better technology, but they were still going to give you the dials and the buttons. Also, they're going to focus on the interior quality, the interior spacing, and the overall practicality. But now, in 2022, it's not just about the driving environment, it's also the driving experience, even for vehicles that are not considered to be sporty or athletic. And what Honda has done for 2023 is make this vehicle feel a bit heavier. But with that, it makes it feel a bit more luxurious. It almost feels as though that Honda is bridging that gap between them and Acura. And it's all because of them focusing on that chassis, giving it that rigidity, that stiffness, where you can go around corners with some confidence, where the steering is heavier, which is something we don't see for a lot of Japanese or American manufacturers. But also on the roadways, whether you're going 30 or 75 miles an hour, it feels planted, it feels composed. And for that CVT, they have reworked it to have it mimic the gear shifts. And I find this vehicle to be at its best driving around the city and the suburbs. But of course, when you are getting on the highway, there will be some droning, but I do believe that you have more than enough passing power to get around slower drivers with ease. So I don't really think it matters whether you go with the hybrid or the full gas-powered model, unless you want to have the better efficiency and of course the 204 horsepower. But I just think that either way, you're getting a great crossover. And overall, when you take a look at what the CR-V is offering for 2023 amongst its rivals, I do believe this is better than the Toyota RAV4. It feels better for sure. The interior is higher quality, it's better insulated, and this is definitely setting the tone for where the compact segment is going to be over the next 5 years. And if you were to ask me whether you should upgrade from your 5th generation CR-V, I would say absolutely, because I know a lot of CR-V owners who come back to Honda year in and year out, have purchased a number of generations throughout the years, and I think they're definitely going to come in and buy a 6th generation because this is far and away better than what we have seen in the last 10 years. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram at Boston Autoblog so you can see what I'm up to and what vehicles I'll be featuring in the future. And I will see you guys next time.